When I was presented with the opportunity to speak about Zacchaeus, you can imagine that what first popped into my head was the image of a man and a tree. A wee little man, in fact, and a sycamore tree, to be particular. I think you know where I'm going with this. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up in the sycamore tree, for the Lord he wanted to see. And as the Savior passed that way, he looked up in the tree, and he said, Zacchaeus, you come down, for I'm going to your house today, for I'm going to your house today. Now I have to tell you that much of the last 12 years of my life have been punctuated with these sing-song, nursery rhyme, Sunday school type songs. So when I was thinking of the Zacchaeus song in context of this sermon, I had a hard time actually placing the tune to it because another song kept coming to mind. Oh, how many of you know this one? Little bunny foo-foo hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and bopping them on the head. Down came the good fairy, and she said, little bunny foo-foo, I don't want to see you scooping up the field mice and bopping them on the head. I'll give you 3 chances, and I'll turn you into a goon. Now, there may be different variations on that. I heard some different words, but it's the same premise that we're singing. Now, there are some similarities, aren't there? The flow of the song, a character who is walking along or hopping along the merry way. We receive images, these vertical images. Our mind's eye is drawn up and down, up into the tree. Zacchaeus is called down to be with Jesus. Little bunny foo-foo scooping up the field mice and bopping them on the head. And the fairy mystically coming down from the sky. Children love to do these motions. Adults love to do these motions, climbing up and climbing down. Now, what else is escapable in its similarities to me is the character of the somewhat reproachful teacher. In the Zacchaeus song, we have Jesus waving his finger. Some children, I remember as a kid, put their hands on their hips and just yelling at Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus, you come down. For the good fairy that comes down, again, with the finger wagging, little bunny foo-foo, I don't want to see you. I think children love these songs, and especially these teacher characters, because it gives them, just for a moment, a chance of role reversal. After all, how many times are they at the end of that wagging finger? Come down, get up, go here, don't do that, do that, stop, go. Now, the fates of these 2 protagonists are very different, or maybe one protagonist and one antagonist in the case of the legendary field mouse assailant. I think of these as examples, however, of cautionary tales. If you do the wrong thing, a grisly fate awaits you, as it did for little bunny foo-foo, who ultimately was turned into a goon because he couldn't control his field mouse bopping. If you do the right thing, well, you will be sitting around the table of the Messiah, as is the case of Zacchaeus. But I'm not here to dissect children's song. Little bunny foo-foo is not Zacchaeus. They're 2 very different stories. We are here today to talk about gratitude, as we have been doing all month in our worships. What is there to know about and learn from Zacchaeus that we don't already know? Go to where you can see Jesus, and when he calls you, follow him. Done. Nice and easy. Next Sunday school song, please. But it's not that easy. In the context of looking at gratitude, Zacchaeus has much to teach us. When thinking of Zacchaeus, the most definitive marker we remember about him is his physical stature. He is small. He is wee. But before we are introduced to this, we are told in the scripture, but not the song, that he was a tax collector. And not only that, he was a rich tax collector. For the first readers of the sacred text in the late 1st century, this would have been a red flag. Tax collectors weren't just the IRS of the ancient Near East. They were the economic glue holding together the political dynamic of Roman occupation over the Jewish populace. You see, the Roman-Jewish relationship was built on a strange form of gratitude known as quid pro quo. You may have heard that in legal terms. A system of a patron giving to a client and the client giving back in return. You give to me, and I give to you. You give me a present, I give you a thank you card. You bring me a casserole when I'm sick, I return the casserole dish with brownies in it. It's a gratitude that says, I just can't receive something from you. I also have to give you something in return. In this case, Caesar, the patron, gives protection, economic stability, and access to services to those who he controls, the client, the Jewish people. And in return, the Jews give loyalty, thanks, and allegiance, definitely no uprisings. This is their strangely enforced expression of gratitude. And the tax collector, the tax collector stood in the middle to help make sure the system of quid pro quo moved easily from the client to the patron, from the Jewish people to Rome. But you see, the problem was that generally the tax collectors were part of the oppressed population as well. They were generally also Jewish, as in this story. And when one of your own is an active part in your oppression, and not only that, getting rich from it, well, generally they aren't the most popular kids at the party. And to add insult to injury, it was perceived that tax collectors like Zacchaeus would on occasion grease their palms a little more than necessary by requiring individuals to pay more than was expected and pocketing the rest. In ancient folklore and literature, in which the Gospel of Luke would fall into, tax collectors' position in society was a scandalized one, making them an ancient villain, combining in a way modern-day lawyers and bounty hunters and hedge fund managers. He would scoop up the vulnerable and pluck from their pockets. So actually, Zacchaeus and Little Bunny Foo-Foo had a lot more in common than we might think. At the get-go, readers are presented with a greedy man, and the original hearers of this story would perhaps be a bit tickled to see that such a greedy rich man was short in stature. So this wee little man climbs a tree because, indeed, he can't see Jesus. But that doesn't give us a clue to why he was there seeking Jesus in the first place. Given that he was a tax collector, given that Jesus had multiple remarks on economic justice and the reevaluation of a political allegiance, and given the fact that Luke makes pains to tell us he wasn't just a tax collector, but a rich tax collector, we have to wonder if something else is going on here. Diana Butler Bass theorizes in her book, Gratitude, that he wasn't there to see Jesus. Zacchaeus was there to keep an eye on Jesus. And he doesn't just climb the tree to keep an eye on Jesus. More profoundly, Zacchaeus climbs a tree because Zacchaeus is a climber. He continues to climb the social pyramid, working his way up the hierarchy as much as possible. Jesus is a man who is challenging the social structure that men like Zacchaeus are benefiting from, and he wanted to see just how great a threat this Jesus is. So with this tree, we have a literary visual of a political reality. One man, Zacchaeus, already signaled out not just because of his stature, but because he is part of the elite, climbs above all the others, climbs the social ladder, if you will. And when Jesus sees him, he goes over and says, "Come down. Come down from the tree. Come down from the social ladder. Come down because I am going to your house." And this, according to Butler Bass, this is the most political thing Jesus does in this scene. At this time in the ancient Near East, the only person who could offer dinner to someone else was an equal or a higher status person offering to an equal or lower status person. Inferiors could not go to dinner or, God forbid, invite themselves to a superior's home for dinner. In this act, Jesus is flipping the cultural power norms and saying to Zacchaeus, "Come down from the ladder, and instead, come around my table." Jesus says, "Come down and give up your way of life. Come down and give up your security. Come down and give up your safety net. Give up the world where gratitude is a commodity in a quid pro quo society, and open your eyes to the pro bono act of receiving free grace and love." And Zacchaeus does. And he goes. And his heart is turned, and he is transformed. Now, while we don't see Zacchaeus fainting over Jesus with tears of gratitude, there are no thank you notes or gooey brownies as a sign of appreciation. His transformation is a sign of gratitude. Bass reflects, as a successful tax collector, Zacchaeus participated in a structure he thought he could never change. But his heart inclined towards something else. God's dream of gifts and grace as proclaimed by the Hebrew prophets. Zacchaeus could not just be content with his personal blessings. He knew gratitude was public, communal, political. Jesus jogged his spiritual memory and made Zacchaeus' deep spiritual longing obvious. In other words, Zacchaeus moved gratitude out of the realm of the individual, no longer just a feeling or an experience to be ruminated on, but moved it into the realm of the ethical, into the realm of the public. In response to his gratitude, he changed himself, and by doing so, began the tectonic shift of moving into God's larger vision. Zacchaeus reminds us that gratitude cannot remain a warm and fuzzy experience. It has to be acted upon. As Bass puts it, we might be grateful persons with thankful hearts and be fanatical about gratitude journals and intentions. But as soon as we walk out of our front door or turn on the news, we are confronted with a world of payback, quid pro quo, corruption, and ingratitude. Thus, even for those of us who live more gratefully, our personal practices and habits are at odds with the world we live in. We get used to toxicity. Who here can honestly say that we have gotten used to toxicity in our society, even in ourselves? In this situation, when we are just used to it, we cannot sustain even our own health. For the good of us all, Bass concludes, we must combine gratitude with resistance. For if gratitude is privatized and collaborates with injustice, it is not really gratitude. Gratitude resists unhealthy environments and empowers the possibility for change. So, what would it look like to make decisions out of gratitude rather than fear? What would it look like to come down the tree of self-protection and skepticism and join around the table of resistance and change? What would it look like if our gratitude journals became our playbooks for political and social action? If we do this, I can only envision it in the way that Diana Butler Bass phrases it in a Thanksgiving prayer. If we do this, we will make thanks with strong hands and compassionate hearts. When we see the sacred generosity of the divine, we become aware that we live in an infinite circle of gratitude, that we are all guests at a hospitable table around which gifts are passed and received. We will not let anything opposed to love take over the table. Instead, we choose to see grace, free and unmerited love, the giftedness of life everywhere as the tender web of all creation. In this choosing and in the making, we will pass gratitude on to the world. Let us pledge to make thanks. May God's Spirit strengthen us in this resolve, here, now, and in the future, around this table, around the table of our nation, around the table of our earth. Go in peace.